Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd, and I'm your host, Sarah Belmont. And with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine.
That's good. Yeah, I know. I know. Before we started recording, we've both had crazy weeks and whatnot, but there's definitely some good nerd goodness to talk about tonight. So that'll at least for me, I have to say, Picard. We'll get into it deeper here, but you're looking at one satisfied blurred here.
I got no response to that. I watched the things, okay? I think a lot of my points, I have almost like parallel points to both of these finales. I think I'm just gonna put this out there. They're safe. It's just safe. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything is safe, and I'll get more on that later. But before we go down that route, which one of these headlines should we start with? The Writers Guild of America has voted to authorize the strike if they do not come to an agreement by May 1st. And so I think we may have a difference of opinion about this, because for me, I'm like, let them go on strike. If they would choose to. I know I remember like almost a decade ago or 2 decades ago, whatever, when there was, and you could tell a difference, but you don't see the effect initially. You always see it because things are forever in production mode. So you're going to get a lot of products that have already been written or shot and everything. Those are going to come out, and then you're going to notice delays with like seasons premieres or movie delays. But Grant, we just went through a very similar thing with the pandemic where we saw a lot of this play out. But it'll be interesting if they go on strike, and B, for how long. So
and I know they've come close in the past, and then at the last minute they were able to work out an agreement with the I guess the Television and Movie Producers Association. I guess that's the group that represents the studios and stuff. But you're right, there have been near misses. There have been strikes in the past where seasons have been shortened or things got delayed due to work stoppages. But I mean, I think really the big thing is here, looking about what the Writers Guild wants is there's definitely, given that now we are in the streaming environment, their compensation model is out of date, because in the past, under their prior agreements, when you had traditional linear television, you had 20 episode seasons, but due to the pandemic and also due to the growth of streaming, seasons now, it's not unheard of to have 6-8 episodes with the show. And but the compensation scales aren't addressing that. So some of the things they are trying to do is just get the standardized compensation and residual terms for features, whether they're released theatrically or on streaming. I guess there's been some things as far as writers' rooms, as far as people abusing the writers' room process and creating mini rooms and only paying them for like one story, even though they've been like working for like 10 weeks or whatever. And also there's pension plan and healthcare contributions, and also just standards. And I know one thing that's really come into play in particular now with Chat GPT and other AI products that are out there now, making sure that human writers are protected if artificial intelligence is being utilized in production. So so they have a lot of things that they are trying to get with their latest deal, and it was almost near unanimous as far as the authorization to strike if they do not come to a deal prior to May 1. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. Another thing that we're just waiting to see what happens is everything to do with Jonathan Majors. as his agency drops him
Mhm.
and more victims come forward to the New York DA. So now he hasn't. Disney hasn't officially fired him from
Nope.
being the big bad. You know, I'm not surprised. We had this conversation when it first came out about his arrest, and you read the victim's statement, I believe, and we talked a little bit about that and just some of the signs that were there. So I'm kind of not surprised that others are coming forward.
Mhm.
And it's a big red flag when an agency drops someone. This is a very unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I would rather, if this is who he is, if he is guilty of all of this, get him out now,
Mhm.
rather than have shot an entire Kang Dynasty movie with him and then like have to suffer this media storm.
Yeah. 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 I know people are trying to make parallels between his situation and Ezra Miller's, but they're two different things. I mean, Ezra's situation, the movie was already made, and yes, I know Loki season 2 has been made, and apparently he's in it, but you're right. I mean, there is a whole. We're just at the start of this story arc. Just taking it to Marvel to more, I guess. First, let me just first say, if it is true, I really do hope that the victim and other alleged victims, do get whatever help they need, and he suffers whatever consequences of committing these acts if because again, we're all proven innocent until proven guilty, but however those kind of big picture things shake out, it is a sad situation for everyone involved, particularly the victims, and if he is responsible for it, he should be held accountable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
includes getting fired from these big
yeah,
jobs. That
yeah.
it includes a career thing. And
Mhm.
I don't want to hear people say, yeah, well, this guy did a bad thing or multiple times. Like, just consider the MCU
Mhm.
is actually not made for adults. It's made for children. And you
Yep.
have these children looking at these characters and that's their world. You don't want people in that world who at the reality are really awful.
Mhm.
Like
Exactly.
Kevin Spacey. That's the
Yeah.
first thing that
Yeah.
comes to my mind. You don't want it. And
Yeah.
I
Terrence Howard. I mean,
I really think like doing things like this and holding actors and actresses accountable for their actions outside of the workplace is the right thing to do. And
yeah.
it goes beyond just actors, celebrities in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have spent far too long in our country allowing for celebrities to basically get away with murder and not be held accountable. And it's just like, no,
Yeah.
they should. And it's their accountability level is a lot higher just because they have a lot more to lose.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I completely 100%. Can't add anything more to that. And but thinking, and you're right. I mean, they're taking it to, I guess, to the MCU, back to more, I guess, more, I won't say trivial things, but as far as like what happens moving forward, I think it seems that Marvel is just taking the wait and see approach about what happens on the court date on May
yeah,
8th. And, Majors' lawyer has come out, she's come out and has pushed some counter story and said they had presented things to the district attorney's office that may exonerate him from this particular matter, but the fact that other people have come forward definitely does raise flags. And it really, when you think about the timing, as far as some of his representation and management companies leaving, maybe, who knows what the story was there. Either, he may have walked away, they may have walked away when they learned that more people had alleged abuse by him. So, so again, there are a lot of things are swirling out there. Court dates coming up May 8th, assuming it doesn't get continued. And, and then we'll see what Disney decides to do from there. But he is already starting to suffer the consequences of his alleged actions. And, with various brands and other projects dropping him, he may realize that he may just step away from Marvel himself just to not be a distraction anymore. So there's a lot of things that could happen here, but at the end of the day, if he is indeed responsible for these actions, then he should be held accountable.
Right. The other bit of news that is swirling in the MCU universe right now is Adam Driver being rumored to be cast as Reed Richards. Makes all the sense in the world. He needs to not be a bad guy.
Right.
But Reed Richards, from what I know of him, is kind of a douche, just disguised as a hero. So I think it would be a good fit. He's got those long limbs already. I'm not mad at this. Again, it's just a rumor, speculation. However, MCU casting rumors 9 times out of 10 turn out to actually happen.
Yeah.
When it's not like clear fans casting.
Yeah, I'd actually heard about this on Jeff Snyder and John Roca's Hot Mic podcast weeks ago, and actually because they were part of their discussion and rumors, that Adam Driver was indeed being looked at for Reed Richards and also potentially Dr. Doom. But like you said, and this was said Snyder said this on this podcast, he's already played that role with Kylo as far as being a bad guy, and he wants to be in that hero mold because quite frankly he hasn't had that opportunity as far as at least in that part of the sandbox. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Reed Richards, I think will be a great person to be cast as Reed Richards. I know apparently, at least with today's Hot Mic, Snyder said that he's pretty much been offered. It's just a matter of just him signing the contract. So at least according to sources. So we'll see what happens.
All right. And then because we're going to talk about 2 finales tonight, the last bit of news is related to one of them at least. But Star Trek Strange New World season 2 trailer dropped. I'm sure Will watched it and wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I did watch it. Really enjoyed it. So this is the one of the 2 spinoffs that it's a spinoff. It's the continuation, I should say, of the original pilot that aired way back in 1965 with Captain Pike. They finally went the series, and it premieres June 15 on Paramount Plus. It's a very episodic format. Prior to this season of Star Trek Picard, I have to say it's probably been my favorite live action iteration of New Trek. And it was a great trailer. Had a lot of answered a lot of just things that were kind of obvious that they just went ahead and put it out there for at the end of last season. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, don't listen to me for the next couple seconds. But number 1, who was the first officer of the Enterprise, was court-martialed because she was genetically engineered. And but she shows up in the trailer. So, and I'm glad to see that because, they didn't, instead of drawing it out, they just put it out there that, yep, she's part of the cast this year. But also, great. You see the Klingons with their ridges, and also looks like they're going to Paul Wesley, who played Captain Kirk last season in the finale, is also returning this year. So in the second season, so he was also in the trailer as well. So yeah, it looks like it's going to just really pick up from a solid first outing and even be more fun this second year. And Anson Mount's just killing it as Christopher Pike. And that's why I said it was kind of it is sort of a spinoff in the sense of Star Trek Discovery, in that they reintroduced Captain Pike, Anson Mount's portrayal of that character, in the second season of Star Trek Discovery, which goes to our next bit of news.
Right. When does it come out again?
June 15th.
June 15th. So when does Star Trek Section 31 starring Michelle Yeoh come out?
Well, it finally did get confirmed this week. So this was a spinoff of Star Trek Discovery, where Michelle Yeoh she played Captain Giorgio, who was actually, interestingly enough, she was the first actress cast in that show. And then Sonequa Martin Green, who plays Michael Burnham, was the other co-lead. But her one character died in the Prime universe, but a mirror version of her character, Empress Giorgio, came into the Prime universe with our characters, and played a very prominent role in the first few seasons of this show, and then left in the third season of Discovery. But this spinoff, which was Section 31, which, I mean, of course, a lot of people learned, was first introduced in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and then was a part of Star Trek Discovery. Her character on that show basically became an agent for Section 31. And so this was going to be a spinoff that originally was supposed to already have happened, but pandemic happened because it was first announced in 2019. Pandemic happened, and then it just kind of languished. And then we got the news this week that they are going to have this as a show. Instead of a show, it's going to be a 2-hour movie instead of a 10-episode show. So that was the big announcement this week, that she's coming back, especially. And she wanted to honor her commitment. She had committed to doing it, and especially given that now she's like blown up. Well, she's always been a big, right, but now she's got Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh behind her name now. So but so it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You're just
I'm feasting. It's been a good week.
Yeah, you're feasting, but you were telling me before about allergy season and how you're and I'm just like, poor dude, and you're gonna be talking majority of this show because now you just get a gush about Picard and Friends. So yeah, what did you how much did you love the finale? Just go for it.
All right. So yes, I really did enjoy this finale. It was I had a nerd. I mean, like I was telling you before, and I'll tell our listeners now. I ran the full range of emotions, from laughter to jumping out of my chair, pointing at whenever. I mean, from the instant the show started with the open. I was just like, with great nod to the original series, with President Alton Chekhov, who it was sort of the message was very reminiscent of from the one with the whales, with the president warning people to stay away from Earth. And then we had the son of the original series character, Pavel Chekhov, who was played by Walter Koenig, who did the voice work for Anton Chekhov in this episode, with the same message. And they call him Anton Chekhov, which was a nice nod to Anton Yelchin, who played Chekhov in the movies that J.J. Abrams made. And so that, he sadly died in a tragic accident at his home. So it was just a nice bit. The scene with the opening of from Next Generation, a series, great nod. Everything about this episode and everything about this season, and you said it yourself, which was nice. It was truly a love letter to the fans, and I said this on my solo review last week. The for me, this, Next Generation really was like my Star Trek, as far as just like the one that I could like really own, because it just, it was produced during my, teens and 20s. And and seeing this story come full circle, and the way that they gave the proper finality to their adventures, um well, it was very rewarding. So I thought that, this is how you do fan service well. You have all the member berries, but you wrap it around a compelling story, and I thought they did so. And I will say, I do not want to see another Borg again.
Why?
I mean, they put a bow on it. They with this, the way that this episode, um, with Jean-Luc, and not like he said in the show, not running from Locutus, but I'm going to embrace Locutus, and I'm going to use Locutus to rescue my son, and then, of course, with the Enterprise D, you know, using the torpedoes and destroying the beacon, and wiping away. It was very clear that the line in the story that the Borg Queen, she was all that was left, and that's why she formed a alliance with the Changelings, because she didn't have any more other than those few remnant body Borg that were on her cube in the red spot on Jupiter. That was it. So that's why she needed the Changelings, to carry out her new mission of annihilation instead of assimilation. But the way that they
Oh, she
that,
said annihilation.
yeah, yeah.
I thought she said something else.
No.
You won't go there.
Yeah, do you sound like you know what you're saying, Worf? Thinking about Worf and threesome.
Oh my god. Yeah. No, I totally hear you, because they kind of, for this entire series, they Borged out, okay? Borged out. It kind of felt like, as for somebody from my perspective, I was just like, okay, are there any other villains out there? Does it all go back to this? I mean, Will's been watching this stuff for my entire life. So
Yeah, I have.
yeah. So like, is there another card they can play? But yeah, it was a fine finale. It wrapped up all the loose ends. It did its thing. It's just the structure. And I just, the hour and a half ago that I finished watching this, might I add, I just I walked away just thinking, when was the last time like a finale really hit me? And why? More importantly, why? Why do some finales, it's just like, oh, okay, this is how we're going to end it. And I know there's a difference between a series finale and a season finale, which we're talking about both tonight, because we're talking about what we understand to be the series finale of Picard, as well as Mandalorian season 3 ending, which both, even though one is a series finale and one is a season finale, both felt very similar to me, where you have the big fight, you do your big fight, and then you have your epilogue moments.
Yeah.
And you round up and so I thought to myself, why does this feel like a CW season finale, or even a series finale? Especially the one it reminded me the most of is the Batwoman finale, because at the time that they did the Batwoman finale, they didn't know if they were going to be picked up for another season or not. So they had to wrap everything up for not only the season, but for the show, but also leave the door open in case they come back. Now, and I felt like, in a way, both of these shows did that as well. They definitely tied things up, and then but they left the door cracked open. And so, to go back to my main point, the last time a finale really hit me, And it's crazy because as soon as I thought about the show, there's one scene in particular that just like entered my mind. And that's when I know a show really gets me, when I can visualize like certain scenes. And it's House of Dragon. Will, you don't have to say it for me. I know you're like, oh, I know where she's.
I know where you're going. Yep, I
And
did.
then I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, that finale did the same thing. Like the penultimate episode was so big, but the finale had that inciting incident where you're just like, sorry, spoiler alert. If you haven't watched House of Dragon, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Watch that damn show. It's so good. But the death of the son, and which like doesn't just leave the door open, but as a viewer, you're like, okay, I need to know what happened. Yeah. It's not like I want to know. No. I need to know because some shit is about to go down between these two mamas. So yeah, I miss the inciting incidents where it's not a tease. It's not a because we get a lot of teases these days with finales, like, ooh, Thrawn is coming. No, he's not.
Yeah. I want to pick up on your point there a little bit too, because I there were some structural things very similar, and I even in our notes I did say I thought there was one thing that Mando did do better than Picard, and we'll get to that in a moment, but one other thing that I did note about this finale, and the thing I really want to go back to is about how a finale hits you.
Right.
This one hit me because, and I think this is where it really comes down to, like, I think and I won't say it won't come down to it, but I think having where a show connects with you, because like because as soon as you started talking, I knew exactly where you were going. I knew you were going to go to House of the Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
And so Picard is the same way. And folks know, I mean, I've never, we've been podding together now since 2017. And this was the one show and one season where I was like, oh, I just gotta like get on our channel here and just like do a reaction, because this season really just resonated with me in a way that I haven't had a show resonate with me in a very long time, to where I just felt like I have more to say,
Right.
And so while I was watching the finale, and you're right, part of it was both these finales, season series, did go a safe route. And Terry Matalas, even, I was reading an article right before we recorded, he even noted that with some of the choices in story, I will say, for a moment there, whenever they went off to do that away mission onto the Borg cube, I did have a moment there where, and even especially when Jack and Picard, when Jean-Luc clicked himself back into the collective and became a Locutus again, I thought back to, I was watching episode. I remember our very first discussion about this season, and we both were like, Picard and his son probably are going to die. And for a moment, I was like, are they going to do it? I did. I was like, ooh, we might have been right. But at the end of the day, no, they pulled back. And Terry Matalas even said it himself. He's like, it never entered his mind, because I think it is a love letter to the fans, and and it's really like putting the action figures safely back up on the shelf, that to give them a proper send off and a safe send off.
Right.
And I'm okay with that, because they did leave that door open for a continuation of some, if not all, of these characters.
Yeah. No, that's also why I think it's so safe, or like, and that idea, a proper send off. And I'm like, yeah, it's a proper send off, but it's also, a proper send off because I can always get it returned to sender.
Or I could come back. Yeah,
Like,
somebody could show up. Writer can show up.
yeah.
I mean,
It's not the finality of it is not there. Which, but granted, and maybe this is another thing to take into consideration, especially when we're talking Star Trek and Star Wars. These stories are not, they're part of a much larger universe, right?
Right.
And we're not talking about one story, one character. We're talking about a franchise. And so when you're dealing with a franchise, it's really hard to draw the line with characters who have been loved by fans for decades.
Yeah.
Just because there's a hopefulness that they can come up, things can intersect again, characters can collide again. Like you want to see. I mean, I just keep thinking about how there's a lot of safe endings with MCU. DCEU, they just fall apart on their like third act, so we won't even go there. But the MCU did kill, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched Endgame, you're like one of maybe 5 people. But Tony Stark, they did kill him. But they also they live in this universe where things happen.
Yeah. Yep.
No.
They didn't kill Steve. They gave Steve a way to like
exactly. They gave him a proper send off while leaving the door open. And it's an interesting thing to think about because my parents right now, for randomly, they went down a Breaking Bad deep dive, which there are these shows with like these legacies of like, they're not a part of a franchise, but their fan base is so huge and it's a very concise, like 5-7 seasons. And there is a finality at the end. The Wire is a very interesting one to put up there, but I would, where those seasons as individual seasons even have endings that are have very resolved stakes. Not just tying up loose ends, but like true resolution. And so maybe that's when I say something is safe, that's when I'm really thinking about. I'm trying to articulate that there is resolution, but there's not a finality in it. And there's not something where we've also talked about this on the show in analyzing so many different shows and the hero's journey and that pathos, and just like how satisfactory is it when the hero does make that sacrifice or does lose something, or and it just changes them, and you get to watch that change occur. But when they just win, it's boring.
But sometimes, and I think that was, I mean, speaking of hero's journey, because we saw that like within Picard this season, we saw that with Shaw. I mean, we saw that evolution and that growth, and I think he was a proxy for Jean-Luc in that regard.
He was the dummy death.
We're
not going to kill Picard, but we'll kill Shaw.
But I mean, but thinking about this now that now that the season is over, and and I know I'm fresh off of the euphoria of the moment and all, but looking back on this series and the themes that they've had run through it,
themes,
the Borg themes, and using the Borg as a crutch, as I guess the MacGuffin to like have Jean-Luc explore himself, and his the legacy of his choices, all of the second season really for the most part, that's where things kind of went sideways. I mean, we both were like, I mean, I'm a Star Trek fan, but it was hard for me to get through that second season,
Yeah,
because I liked where they were deconstructing Jean-Luc.
right.
I liked that part, but then all the other stuff around it was
The
just like,
goofy ass stuff.
yeah, yeah, it just was hard. But I think now looking at it as totality, especially with this season, with the whole issue of family and the found family and the family that Jean-Luc didn't know that he I think back to a line he said in one of the episodes, or maybe it was Generations, the first movie, where he there's no more Picards, as far as when his brother died and his nephew died, and seeing Jean-Luc now has that family and that legacy that at first he was like, I don't need a legacy, but now he really does. It was a very satisfying conclusion, and especially to his arc, and like I said, yes, there were the member berries there, but the thing that really I think set this season apart with these characters was, and especially given that they spread it out over 10 episodes rather than trying to do it in a 2-hour movie. We got to see where these people are now, 20 years after last time we saw them in Star Trek Nemesis, which was literally 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And they really showed the evolution of everyone, and where they ended, and ended up around that poker table, just like they did at the end of the Next Generation. It was very cathartic and very satisfying for me as a Star Trek fan. And I, like I said, this season, just start to finish, just really resonated with me, and it definitely goes down as probably one of the best seasons of Star Trek that I've ever watched, over all the series, both live action and animated. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely definitely rewatchable. So it'll be getting added to my rewatching rotation of Star Trek shows for sure. But the one thing I will say, and as if we want to start the transition over to Mandalorian from here,
Yeah, yeah. What did it do not as well as
I
Mandalorian?
would I I would have done what the Mandalorian did with no in credit, because I think for me at least, having Jack and Q, I get where they were coming from with that as far as the story continues, and it was a nice bookend to Encounter at Farpoint. And also, like, what some of our discussion that we were just having about the hero's journey can continue instead of having a finality.
Right.
But if you're going to close out a story with the Next Generation crew, I would have ended it. I would have had that scene with Jack and Q before the rest of them at the bar and closing out their story.
Right. Yeah, that is a great point, especially because if they had it at that point that you just mentioned, I would have seen it, because Mandalorian screwed me up. I watched the full credits and I'm like, I know they're gonna do a teaser. There was
Mhm.
no teaser. And so tonight when I had Picard going, I was like, I'm just moving on. It's gonna be a long. I'm not staying for the credits, and so now you're telling me there was a little tease of Jack and Q. So it's like, what? Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But yeah, The Mandalorian did not have an end credit scene. It did do up until that point everything Picard did, which is just the yeah. Here's okay. My first point about the Mandalorian finale is that the episode that aired last week and this week should have been one episode.
Mm.
Drop them both. Do the reverse of this, like, let's drop the first two episodes. No, drop the last two episodes, okay? Because it truly felt like part one and part two.
Mhm.
And which is fine to have part one and part two, but like I had to wait a week and now I just get to see the fight and then the victory. it felt so anticlimactic for me.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay. And it's just this season just has been very like it hasn't been awful. Because we all went through Boba Fett and that was god awful. But it also hasn't been what it was before it decided to like just ruin everything, like by undoing like the best season finale of Mandalorian is still season 2, and that's not because Luke Skywalker shows up. That's because there's a choice that is made. Like the main fucking character actually makes a choice, and in this season, it's very cute that he adopted Grogu. Yeah. It's very cute that he adopted him into his cult. But it's also, and that they're going to be dad-son duo cop, like hunting down, being bounty hunters together for good, not evil. But I don't know. Where's the conflict here? Where's I want to see where this goes. Like, I really am curious about how this will change them. Like, no, that's not what people are waiting for. People are just like, Grogu is going to say something and he's going to say dad and we're all going to cry. No, I'm not going to cry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I enjoyed this week's episode. I mean, it wasn't like it was like you said in the notes, it was safe. And I don't know, it was just something about it. It was just like this season. I guess I don't know. This season had so many fits and starts. When it hits, when it nailed it, it nailed it. But when it missed, it missed. And I think part of it was like I don't know if it was because Pedro's was out shooting Last of Us, or if it was a story, the way they structured it to be about this restoring Mandalore. But I think the thing that really what I think what it came down to me was it was just very, it felt very like shallow as far as the storytelling. I mean, they had great, like the one episode they went with Pershing, and that was the one episode I thought they went somewhat deep as far as just really exploring something and cultivating something. But everything else was just sort of, we're just going to like dip our toe in the water and we'll just throw out, we'll just, and really not touch, go any deeper than that. And it just left me feeling a little just not completely satisfied as someone, especially just coming off the heels of Andor or even Star Trek. I mean, when you're watching these things parallel, I mean, we had that discussion back in the fall, like House of the Dragon and Andor and some of these other shows, when you're watching, two fantasy or two genre related shows and big franchises at the same time. And, that's why poor what was it? The Lord of the Rings show never had a chance for us.
Oh, God. Like,
yeah.
we never
Rings of Power. Yeah. I can't even remember the name of it. Yeah. Rings of Power. Yeah.
But no, like it is crazy because even though The Last of Us wrapped up like right when both of these shows were getting started, we did see a few parallels even to that, which is a very different genre than space. But still it's there. And I think that's both a good thing and a bad thing because parallels can stand out stronger and maybe one show executed it better than another show. Or because you're watching both, like it even hits harder than it would if you're just watching one of them.
Yeah.
And also I think you're right. Like this season, it's just felt shallow. Where and we talked about this going into the season where I really didn't want to understand more about Mandalorian lore. And they gave it to us, but not in a way where a average Star Wars viewer can really engage and like really be in awe of the lore.
Yeah.
Just felt very boring. It was, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just want to point out this one thing before I forget, because it's not in my notes. But the Mandalorian are stronger together. Okay. Last night when I watched it, I was like, why does that sound familiar? And then I forgot. And then today, right before we started recording, I had on Roka podcast, Geek Buddies, breaking down this episode. And they brought up the line and saying how cool it was. It wasn't cool. Why wasn't it cool, y'all ask? I could swear that is a line said by Caesar in the most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy. Like, I swear to God.
Oh, stronger together. It's like, I mean, heck, it was in Picard. It was, it's a very, very overused term these days, pop
culture. Is.
And political, not to get political, but even in politics. I mean, you hear it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. I mean, Katie Sackhoff couldn't even save that line, and she basically saved this season.
She did. She did.
I have to on their back.
I'm sure she's getting a lot of ice baths right now because she carried this season. And again, I think I don't like I said, I don't know if it was production things with Pedro, with Last of Us, overlapping with shooting schedules with this season of Mandalorian or what, but it just seemed, I don't know, it just seemed
the writing wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think that I heard Favreau wrote more of this season than Filoni. And when I heard that, a switch went off in my mind where I'm like, okay, I see this season for what it is now, and that's very telling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Filoni, I mean, it's like me, it's like you trying to talk about Star Trek when where you have you're the Favreau, I'm the Filoni as far as in the relationship here. and that's how it is like with the Mandalore, because I mean Filoni just with Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff, I mean he deepened that lore as far as Mandalore. Right.
And it's not even, you're walking a thin line, like from what Filoni has done. He's managed to rejuvenate the lore and expand upon it and get people, more fans involved in it who are now going back and rewatching things, who are watching cartoons too, like reading books and all this, because the stories how he's utilizing the lore to tell his stories is very good storytelling. And with Favreau, if I understood correctly, that he mainly wrote this season, and I think the most writing Filoni did was the episode that you brought up earlier with Pershing. That is very telling as well.
Yeah.
And I think with Favreau, he took much more of this is a product.
Yeah.
This is make it very commercial. We have our main character, even though we're not really going to utilize him. I don't know if it just. I think why that episode with Pershing stands out. It's not just because it's very similar to Andor. Out of all the episodes this season, and arguably in the entire series of Mandalorian, it is the most structurally different.
Yeah.
And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the same episode that ends in the armory with Bo-Katan getting her mended shield? Or is that the following episode?
I think that was the one.
Okay.
or maybe or at least she confessed, or at least she talks to the armorer about seeing the mythosaur. At least maybe she just posits it to the armorer.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's the same episode. It might be
Yeah.
because I like the parallel shots between Boa Katan and Grogu in the armory
Mhm.
really stick out to me. Like if years from now when we talk and I randomly mention Mandalorian, like that image of Grogu at the armory for some
Mhm.
reason will pop in my mind
Yeah.
because there was something very visual about that. But I want more like shots. I don't know where I was going with that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think there was just a lack of depth with this season, with this story, with the story they wanted to tell. There
Yeah.
was a lot of exposition and not a lot of like
Yeah.
true,
'Cause-
yeah.
yeah. Because even by the end with Gideon, I mean, you have Giancarlo Esposito, who's like, you know, kills you know kills it everything he does.
Right.
And I will say, when I was watching the finale, I was just like, he is now the scene chewing, mustache twirling villain, and all the things that made Gideon so menacing wasn't there anymore. It was just kind of cookie cutter villain.
Yeah, that's what I said about the previous episode. And the moment they lost me was when he became that villain. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I don't like where this is going.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't like it.
yeah,
I don't like it at all. Like
yeah.
I've seen this villain in Star Wars so many times. And
Hmm.
it's just and now like I've heard this name Thrawn thrown out all over the place,
Yeah,
hyped up.
yeah.
I'm fearful. I'm so fearful that in Ahsoka, Thrawn is not going to meet my expectation. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna put it and
That's a good fear.
maybe he does, but how long will they last? And now my final point I want to say is just that the safe ending we got of Mandalorian season 3 just makes me think about our conversation last week about how does this series end on
Hmm.
a good note, on a positive note. Like this is why I don't think it should, but the way they ended this season, I'm just like, "Oh god. We're going to get like
Yeah.
a very weird ending to this entire series and I don't think it's going to be satisfactory."
Yeah, yeah. I thought about our conversation too, especially like whenever they were sitting on the ranch,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh boy, they're going to rip our hearts out whenever this thing like ends."
Yeah, and we're not talking because like it's going to be so sad, like in a good way. No, we're talking like, oh my God, they ruined a perfectly good story thing and they did it.
I think it's going to be a combination of both.
Um,
If it's Filoni, I will say I think he can do, just thinking about the end of Rebels.
mhm.
Um, it will be it, it will be done in a very depthful way, deftly done way that yeah, it'll be sad, but I don't think we won't be like critical of that ending,
Yeah.
because
If it's his ending, who knows? We might get a Favreau ending.
no, it'll his movie's wrapping up the Mandoverse, so it'll be his ending, unless he hires John to write it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that in the future.
Yeah,
You'll have to explain that whole thing to me of how a series gets ended with a movie
yeah,
because in the past that has never worked out well. But
yeah.
okay.
All right.
So in terms of other things, and I usually lead with this, but I wanted to save it to the end
Yeah,
for some reason. And I'm surprised you have not asked me about this, Will. Like shame on you. You know how much I love reality TV.
yeah.
Because arguably the best show going on right now, y'all, is Vanderpump Rules. And I am not someone who jumped on the bandwagon just when all this shit broke out in the beginning of March. No. I have watched Vanderpump Rules since the second season. And I thought that was the peak. I thought these people could not get any worse. Will, do you understand what I'm talking about?
I am familiar, a little familiar with Vanderpump, but I'm gonna sit back and rest my voice. And let you run the
Have
show.
you recently heard the term Scandival?
Scandival, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because who the fuck hasn't heard that term? It is crazy how big this has gotten. And oh my God, it is so fascinating to watch this season. Season 10 of Vanderpump Rules. Like season 2 and 3 were arguably its peak of drama. And it was good. It was good drama. But the fact that the real drama, the cheating scandal of the century happened after they got done filming, only for them to turn cameras back on and to film the final episode because this was all playing out in real time. And now people are watching the show knowing the affair between Rachel, and yes, I'm calling her Rachel because Raquel is dead, and Tom. Like, it is mind-blowing. And now, like, before I was a fan, Will, but I never, like, outside of the show would go and try to find the podcasts that these people do. No, yeah. I do. I listen to them, and they give so many deets. Granted, I'm kind of like, I don't want to know too much about what happens, but I want to know what happens. And I also want to know what the editors are leaving on the floor. And man, it is just insane how this show managed to capture two people who are like, no, they didn't murder anybody. They had an affair. But the twistedness of some of the things, like the girl, Rachel.
Yeah.
This season has been had a little rivalry with another character, but another girl on the show named Lala, who unknowingly was a mistress to her ex.
Oh.
Yeah. It is long thing. Like there's so many anyways, but this episode, like Rachel finds herself in the situation and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm a mistress now because of this other." I'm losing focus here. All I have to say is this show is arguably this is the best season of reality television, and it's just blowing my mind how vindictive it's to the point. I mean, I've watched the seasons of Vanderpump Rules so many times, like it's ridiculous. And I'm not talking recently. I'm talking back in the good old days, like seasons 1 through 4. And then recently, over the last 2 weeks, I've kind of been rewatching all of the reunions. The signs were there of how fucked up Rachel is. So like it's insane. All the signs were there. And also all the signs are there that Tom Sandoval is like the dirtiest human being alive. It's so fucked up. Oh my God. I love it so much, but I'm a bit disappointed you have not asked me about this, but I'm glad we're allowing this moment to happen now.
It's all about Tommy. I didn't realize I hadn't realized Vanderpump Rules been around for 10 years. Wow, 10 seasons. Wow.
It's crazy. It is it's insane. And there are like Tom Sandoval, Sheena Shea, and Katie Maloney are the 3 remaining OGs. A lot of the other characters you could call Ariana's my girl. I've loved her since season 2, which is when she first really was there, even though I know she was shown a little bit in season 1, but not really. But yeah, but now it's funny because during the pandemic, a lot of stuff happened and a lot of the cast actually got fired from the show because of some stuff. That's all I'll say. But now, in the wake of all of this, these old cast members, you start seeing more and more of them pop up because at the end of the day, like, they're not making this up. No, these people actually are friends in real life, as mind-blowing as that is.
Like, they just have a scripted drama.
You wish, like, it would be so weird if this, like, it is a very good, like, fan fiction if it is a scripted drama, but the fact that it's actually real just is crazy. And I've rewatched the Watch What Happened Live that was shot like an hour before Sheena found out about the scandal, because she was on the after show with Rachel and they're buddy. And then she finds out because Ariana calls her because that's her best friend. Anyway, I don't know if any of this is making sense. But all I have to say is, if you're not watching this, you are fucking missing out, because it is insane. The hypocrisy.
Okay, so see, I see some of the Vanderpump things, and like pop up in our on our show account email with some of the news alerts we get from the trades. So now I'm going to start reading them a lot closer.
No, don't do that to yourself. Don't do it, because then you're just going to be like, I've seen so many TikToks of like old men who just ask their daughters, like, why are we watching this? Why do these people matter?
Yeah, don't worry. I'm not about to go like binge like years of like that show. I'm just it's just more a curious. It's just like, oh, okay. That'll just be my way to like be able to like queue up a question for you.
Yeah, but it's the curiosity of it all. It's so, and there are a lot of people who are jumping on this bandwagon, and then the OGs, like, we're referencing things that happened years ago, and they're like, I didn't know that happened. It's like, no, because you need to watch this season, this episode. Like, it's a lot. I'm sorry. It's just, I am, in a way, this is the best thing and the worst thing, just because it's tragic. Like, it's not tragic, but it's just sad that this couple of almost 10 years, like, he cheated on her for 7 months behind her back with a friend of hers who's on the show.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. That's always the worst.
Like, and
I mean, not that any cheating is good, but like, you know, if it's like,
yeah. And then from what all signs are pointing at, and during their reunion and in this last episode that they shot right after everything was unveiled, he basically is gaslighting her and calling her crazy and saying like not taking accountability in the most grotesque way. We're just like, no, you're not, like, the public is not gonna like we're not falling for this narrative anymore.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. On that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk on Twitter, as long as I'm hanging out there. WILMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.cnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.